Hey, special dedication to each and everyone who watched the Niina Kabesa live show. Watch me so, me go so them live it every time my music play it feel live. Greetings, proper fix, proper fix, proper fix. I bring you peace, I bring you peace. We good to go, good to go. Good to go then in a Kabesa live show. What you gonna do? What you gonna do now? What you gonna do? What you gonna do now? Everyone, let's get it on. Watch the Niina Kabesa live show. Everyone, let's get it on. Watch the Niina Kabesa live show. Bring your wisdom to people in a comfort of their home simple. Say again. Bring your wisdom to people in a comfort of their home simple. What more? What more? Tune in, tune in, keep watching the Niina Kabesa live show. Yes, no problems, no problems, no problems, no problems. Yes, indeed. Greetings. One live it, grow it, ordinary snakehead, hatchet the flying dragon, questions good, say that. What up, what up, what up, what up?
Welcome to the Niina Kabesa live show today. Today, I'm not really going to do much of speaking today because the whole show today is going to be hosted by the co-host. And I just wanted to come to say hi, welcome to my followers, my amazing people who listens to me, and also let you know that next month is the month when I get to speak Lingala throughout the whole show. So I selected a few things that I'm going to talk about. But today I want to remind you that tomorrow a mixtape where I featured in is coming out tomorrow. iTunes, go support, buy it. But let me not talk much. I'm going to play this little advert about the mixtape that's coming out tomorrow. And when we come back, you're not going to see me. You're going to see the co-host. Watch this for a bit.
Fake friends surround me like air. Fake friends surround me like air. Fake friends surround me like air. Fake friends surround me like air.
Dying of false ambition, falling short of understanding you. The mind is such a thing to waste. Whether you hear me or not, I cry louder every day to be heard.
Harsh professor with dark complexion, I start the session. My architecture is cold as snow in the harshest weather. My bars are clever, my heart is dead and it's dark as ever. My last endeavor was ripping rappers apart for leisure.
I feel like I'm about to blow. I'm recognized everywhere I go. Fake friends treat me like I've changed, but the truth is I'm exactly the same.
Never too late. Never too late. Never too late.
Come on, I take the power like you did. Come on, never hold back 'cause I'm too brave. Come on, I read my books, I write my flow. The young king in the industry don't wanna know.
Chosen creed, pose the evil that men do. Nostalgic persona, my mind free from the psychological holder. I'm far from the same pain mediocre. Cranking on a different level, keep my street composure.
Some did say that true love comes with great pain, but I say it's a lie because his love is unconditionally. That's how I will love you. Endlessly.
Burning desire to get a little higher. Sidestep hell without touching the fire. I ain't saying anybody is a liar, but from African religion they created the Messiah. Now that's a whole nother rap tune. Any place I live I got a booth in a back tune. Spontaneous any time of the
Hi guys, and welcome back to the Niina Kabesa live show.
of course, I'm going to be co-hosting today's subtopic, which is called well-being. As you know, of course, the main topic is family lessons. So I'm going to go straight into it. Now, based on a TED talk that I've watched that focuses on mental well-being and the family, I decided to pull together the 4 key points that were picked up. So, number 1, don't go through it alone. Now, there are multiple families that are going through like different mental health challenges and learning and discovering that someone within their family, within their closest circle, is struggling with a mental illness. And you have to always keep in mind that you're not alone, you're not the only person. There are certified people that you can go and see, and there's also many people around you that you might not have known that are currently recovering and dealing with mental health. Now, these 4 points are 4 ways to turn problems of mental health in the family into potential solutions, because I believe that just because someone is struggling with a mental health illness, that doesn't mean that there's no hope for them. It doesn't mean that you always need to see it in a negative light, but there are solutions to every problem that we face. Now, continuing with point 1, I think communication is absolutely vital. You cannot progress unless you speak. And I'm saying this on a physical but also mental level, because when it comes to the house, like depending on which culture you come from, like there'll be certain things that you do, especially your tone of voice, so the way you talk to your parent or the way you talk to your child that's dealing with any form of mental illness. Because I think that if you always feel the need to use a harsh tone, you need to know that you're consciously doing it, and it's something that if you're going to be using a harsh tone towards someone that's dealing with a mental illness, it's not going to help them. Mm-hmm. It's going to make them feel 10, 20, 100 times worse.
Okay.
So I think tone of voice is definitely the most important thing.
And that's number 2. Yeah.
No, that's number 1 still.
Number 1 still, okay.
Yeah. And of course, I know that Nina's touched up on this quite a bit in the last video, but again, that extra emphasis. Now, number 2, don't get into fights. Now, according to the doctor that did this TED talk and all other sources, this is something that can be the most trickiest to follow, simply because, like I said a few seconds ago, your tone of voice when speaking to someone is essentially recognized and immediately picked up upon. Like, for example, if I was still dealing with depression and Niina was to use her tone harshly towards me for like no particular reason, then obviously my response isn't really going to be going back to her for support. Like the next time I feel the need to speak to someone, it just won't be her. Now, she's my mother, and that would make a huge contribution to how I recover, when I recover, and how long it will take for me to recover. Now, the same thing can go the other way around. Like if Niina was dealing with depression and she was like, you know, Nicole's the oldest, she might understand a few things more than the others. And if I was like being my stereotypical teenage self, always moaning and complaining and being rude and showing attitude, like she's not gonna wanna come to me. Like the next time, she'll instead try to cover up the fact that she's depressed, which again can be burdenous, because as you bottle up all your feelings and emotions, the way it's gonna burst is gonna be 10 times worse than it could have been if you'd have gotten to the root and found the right help appropriately.
Okay.
And another way, find a better way for the person in your close circle to cope. So in other words, you get what you give. So if you're giving partiality, if you're giving unkindness, if you're giving, oh, if it was like someone else, then, you know, you wouldn't act like this, but because you're around me, then you're acting like this. Then obviously, again, the way that the individual is going to respond will not be a positive one for themselves. And the final point under number 2 is leverage and negotiation with the individual. So let's say that it was a young person that was dealing with any form of mental illness, and you kind of like, for example, let's say you give them a phone, right? You allow them to get a phone. Now, you can say like, oh, you ungrateful child, here's your phone. Or to help them better themselves mentally, you could form the leverage negotiation like act, in the sense that you can have this or you can do this on your phone if you promise to help yourself mentally by taking care of yourself both mentally and emotionally. And the same way can go around with parents, but it will make all the difference, right? So, moving on to number 3.
Okay.
Learn how the mental health system works, learn the rules, and also learn how to bend them.
Wait, bend the rule?
Yeah.
Okay, carry on.
I'm right about to explain that to you. So, bending the rules, learning the system, learning how this institution works. Number 1, you need to learn to be an active, vocal advocate, not only for family members, but also for yourselves, because based on my own experience and the things that my family had to deal with, as well as many other families that I've known of, not all institutions will know about the individual's mental health illness, and most of them will not even care. Now, I say this using school as the most common example. So school may identify someone struggling with a mental challenge as being deviant, as being inappropriate, and as just like a behavioral problem child. And that is just simply not the case, which is, again, the importance of advocacy, because even certain doctors, especially if you're a young person that's dealing with a mental health illness, like if you directly go to the doctor without consent of parents, there's only so much that the doctor can do without parents knowing. However, when I say bending the rules, they may not be able to give you all the advice and all the recommended clinicals to see, but they do. But you as an individual young person, you do have the right to say whatever you have to say, and the doctor has to listen, at least.
So what you're telling me is, if you as a young person, for instance, say that you want to be submitted to a, say, mental institute for the children because you know that you're not okay, so if you say it, they have to listen.
Yeah, they have to listen, and of course, if it is a risk factor towards your health and safety and your very life, then of course they do have the right to listen, but they do need to follow protocols. So obviously, with your example that you just mentioned, after speaking to you, they would have to inform parents and necessary professionals in order to get that raised specifically. But even when it comes to little things such as therapy groups and things like this, of course, for an adult, it is slightly easier because they're over the 18 barrier. But like I said, bending the rules does not have to be like being deviant. It can just be something as simple as being more vocal about mental health as in total, because mental health to this day is still a stigma, especially in certain communities and
The
different
black
groups
community.
of people. Yes, especially the black community, black African
Caribbean,
communities.
yeah.
But yeah, again, with stigma, I don't want to go too deep into this, but with stigma, it's all like culturally implanted. It's not like anyone comes out of the womb thinking like, oh, mental health is a stigma, or talking about sex is a stigma, or other things like this. Like, it's something that is environmental, something that's been implanted environmentally.
Yeah.
And I think this is even more important to break that barrier and break that stigma of mental health, because a lot of people go through it behind closed doors, but you just don't know it. Now,
It's interesting.
moving on to the fourth and final point, remember, you're on more of a marathon than you are on a sprint. Now, a lot of people find misconnotations behind mental health and recovery, especially as a family member, because many believe that it's just something that you see overnight, or like in a week, in a day, in 2 days, in a month. Like, that is just not the case. And now I'm being a little bit more specific on the different types of mental health disorders. Like, for example, something that's more psychological, like dealing with psychosis or schizophrenia. It's definitely not something that you can just overcome overnight. And I think that is a huge misconception that a lot of people will tell you, because what you as a family member or as a close friend or relative have to keep in mind is that, yes, recovery does happen, but at the same time, you need to be ready for some alterations. Like, for example, I remember when I first moved back into my house after I was discharged from the Priory after 2.5, 3 months. And of course, like, there were some changes that just had to be made within the household that I was going back into. And in that same way, I think it's very important for family members to be especially ready for that. Like, don't expect the person to remain the exact same. Sometimes there are people that do recover, but they never like turn back into the person they once was. And that is simply because they are now better than the person that they once was. And yes, it does take more than one night to recover. Now, there will be delays of doctors and there will be waiting lists because, as you know, like over the past few years, NHS and other medical institutes have been like causing a lot of patients to wait 3 hours to 3 weeks for something as simple as a physical checkup. Now, if it's going to take 3 weeks to a month for a physical checkup, how much longer do you think it's going to take for the NHS to recognize the mental? Now, again, like I said, mental health is something that is still stigmatized, even though only now certain politicians and government are starting to bear this in mind, in the sense that mental health is important. Mental health can be impactful on the individual of whom it impacts, especially when the mental health is bad. And I think, yeah, there's going to be a lot of delays, and sometimes recovery will include setbacks. Now, I remember in year 10, because I came out of Priory in year 9, there were moments where I felt dips of depression slowly try and seek in. And like, there was only one day where I was just literally ready to go and kill myself all over again, to do the attempt all over again, and this time succeed. But at the same time, I had to think to myself, like, Nicole, after all that you've gone through, after all the recovery that you've started, do you really want to end it here, end it now? And I think being in the family is very influential. People can use that to their advantage or their disadvantage, which brings me to ask, like, is your family secure enough to be encouraging you? Is your family secure enough to be like, Nicole, I know this is a bad day for you, but at the same time, you've gone through this, and that. You've gone through more things than other people would have had in a decade. Like, why do you want to give that all up, sort of thing? Of course, there are different methods that different families will use to encourage their children. And same with like how children will encourage their parents, because they only know so much compared to the parent. But another thing that you have to keep in mind is that, yes, recovery will happen. Yes, you see recovery all over the world, even within your family, of someone that once dealt with a mental illness but is now overcoming it, is now embracing that alternate lifestyle that they now choose to live.
And you think that's because people are becoming more aware of the mental illness, or because people are now coming out and talking about the mental illnesses?
I think it's more to do with the second point. Bless you. I think it's more because people are coming out. Because I think awareness is great, but I believe to the majority, awareness is nothing in compared to experience. So if you put the two together, it's more of a powerful combination. Now, obviously, I am someone that went through severe depression, went through the suicidal thinking to the point where I was in a mental institute at the young age of 13. But I think coming out the other side, knowing that I've been on both sides of the tunnel, makes all the difference, because there are some things that only someone that has dealt with a mental health problem
Will
can
understand.
say and can understand.
So would you then say, I mean, we will do another show for it, but would you then say that somebody who's been on both sides, you know, the dark side and gone through it and out, understand better than somebody who may not have gone through it but read some things about it?
I would say it depends on the individual. Mostly, yes. However, there will be some instances where, like, obviously there's a difference between like you educating yourself and someone that would like take degrees towards a particular focus. Now, both are relevant, both are good, but having someone that has experienced it, but not only has experienced it, is now in the current process towards recovery and is ready enough to talk about their mental health problem, mental health challenge.
Yes, they've come on the positive
overcome it.
side.
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, that is more important because you need to remember you're on a marathon and not a sprint. This is not an 100-meter speed.
I like
this
that.
is a consistent running marathon. Because again, like I said, recovery is not something that will go overnight. But it is a day-by-day progress. Like one step out of a million is fine because it is a step. Just don't stop there. Just don't fall back. Obviously, you will have those setbacks, but when you get down, you have to get yourself back up.
And it's okay to have the setbacks, by the way, isn't
Yes.
it? So there's nothing wrong with somebody who just wakes up in the morning and said, today, I want to stay in the bed. So you would rather encourage them to stay in the bed just to listen to how they feel, or would you encourage them to go out there, try to pretend to be something that they're not?
I would say, like, your feelings, your emotions are quite deceptive. Like, now scripturally speaking. Because one thing that I've learned over the years is that if you move by all your feelings, if you move by all your emotions that you're feeling, then you're not going to get anywhere. Like, for example, me even coming on the show, like, I was like nervous for real. I was excited,
the word right there.
but also nervous. But at the same time, I had to go beyond that feeling and move by action. Because, like, yes, you will have some days where you just feel like, oh, I want to stay in the bed. But at the same time, if you stay at the bed, then you're stopping yourself from doing so many things that you could have been doing had you have gone out of the bed. And in the same way, you're going to have some setbacks that will make you fall back into old habits. But it is your responsibility, your duty to get yourself back up, because it's not only for the people around you in your family circle, but it's also for the benefit of yourself, your own mental well-being, your own health. And which is something that is really important. Now, everyone sees recovery, but clinicians, doctors, counselors that will work with you or your family or the individual in your family, they will never know precisely when, which is why you must never give up and you must persevere, because that perseverance brings hope. That hope will not fail you.
Okay.
Now, after these 4 points, I'm just going to quickly retell them. 4 points. Don't go through it alone. You're not alone in this.
Yeah.
Don't get into fights. Watch your tone of voice, especially parents. Watch your tone of voice. Kids, youth. Number 3, learn how the mental health system works. Learn the rules and learn how to bend them the right way, of course.
Okay.
Not everyone is going to listen to you, which is why you must make yourself heard until help comes around. Not only for your sake, but the sake for other potential families that are dealing with the same struggles.
Absolutely.
And number 4, remember, you are on more of a flipping marathon than you are a sprint. Now, before we go, I'd like to quickly show you a video which is called The 5 Do's and Don'ts of Dealing with a Loved One's Mental Illness.
We'll be sharing 5 tips for helping someone with a mental illness based on an article from issue 2 of our magazine. One of the biggest factors in whether those who are mentally ill will open up to a person about their feelings is how that person reacts. It can be frustrating when someone in our life is ill, and we don't like seeing our loved ones in pain and often want to help. These 5 tips should help assure that your loved one can open up more to you. Tip number 1. Don't allow your negative emotions to be visible. Like I said, it can be frustrating trying to help someone who's ill. You might feel anger, pity, sadness, or even helplessness when trying to help. It's best not to show these emotions. Don't sigh when your loved one responds in a way you don't like, and don't talk to them as if they are stupid. Keep in mind, if they could act healthy, they would, and if you show a negative reaction to your loved ones, they are much more likely to hide their feelings. On to tip 2. Do show them that you still care. This one may seem obvious, but often mental illness makes a person feel broken or somehow less than. Therefore, your loved ones should be reminded that you care greatly about them. Without this reassurance, they may feel as if no one cares. Tip 3, and this one is an important one. Don't tell or remind them that it could be worse. This is extremely unhelpful. The idea that knowing that some people are worse off will feel better is simply not true. In fact, it might make your loved one feel even worse. Firstly, all that matters to your loved one right now is that they feel bad. So bringing up others doesn't really factor in to how they feel. Secondly, this reminder may cause guilt within your loved one. They may feel guilty for talking about the illness, or even worse, feel guilty for being ill at all. This means that your loved one is less likely to open up about their illness to you or to anyone else in the future. Tip 4. Don't try to relate how they feel to your own experiences. That is, unless you have the same illness, of course. It can be tempting to try and relate how they feel to things you've been through. But telling someone who has bipolar that you understand because you have mood swings, or your friend with anxiety that you understand because you get anxious before exams, isn't helpful. Mental illnesses are more extreme than other behaviour and feelings, and it can often feel invalidating to the person to hear these things. Also, doing this tends to focus the conversation back on you when it is the other person who needs support. So it's best to listen rather than try to offer up your own stories. And finally, tip 5. Do try and research their illness. The internet is a wonderful tool that allows you to research whatever illness your loved one has. You can research symptoms, helpful tips, and read others' experiences. This all means that you can support your loved one in the best way possible. Something good to research is particular warning signs and how best to deal with them. Knowing, for example, that someone's first sign of anxiety can be them feeling very hot is good for spotting when a possible anxiety attack is about to rear its head. That's it for our tips. We hope that you now feel better equipped to help support someone with mental illness. Remember, it's always good for someone with mental illness to seek medical attention and help. If you liked this video, please like, share and subscribe. Also, if you'd like more from our magazines, they are on sale at www.psych2go.shop. You can also check out our Patreon at patreon.com/Psych2Go magazine.
So, hi guys, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the short 5-minute clip. Now, before I wander off, I'd just like to quickly share some final thoughts based on the video, because I think it was pretty educational for a lot of reasons. So one thing that I picked up was that you, as a family member that has never gone through a mental health struggle, don't try to compare yourself 24/7 to someone else's mental health challenge. I liked how they used the example of someone dealing with anxiety versus someone only dealing with anxiety when there's exams. Like, it's not the same thing, and I don't think you should try and compare yourself in that sense, because it belittles the individual and kind of like suppresses what they're dealing with. The second point that I found based on the video was that saying it could be worse really does make the person feel worse. One of the worst things someone with a mental illness can be told is that they aren't valid. And you have to keep in mind that these are people, and by saying that there are people deserving of more help and support than you, again, just does not help their situation and does not help them take that step forward in recovery.
Okay.
The final thing that I picked up was the importance of research. Use the right sources online. Like, for example, you have the NHS website, and you also have other medically certified websites, as well as organizations. And you need to identify exactly what your loved one is going through and help them in the best of your abilities, because yes, there will be websites that will show the signs and the potential solutions, but at the same time, also keep in mind that each and every individual is just that, an individual. Just because someone is dealing with schizophrenia does not mean that you have to box them in with the same symptoms if not all of them apply to them.
Okay.
Now, thank you guys for listening to me. And also, before I go, I didn't say this earlier on, but today is in fact my 17th birthday.
Wow, that's
yeah.
good. So how does it feel for you to come in here and speaking to all this audience about mental health, the wellness being in the family?
I think I'm just really honored to be here, like talking about something that, again, I'm really passionate about. And I think as well, I just thought it was really important for the family to be aware of the mental well-being within their family, because family is an institution that's very influential.
To a parent or a mother who's watching out there, who may have a teenager that they don't understand that they're going through, to the government who are going to be watching this maybe at some point, you know, what are the things that you want to tell them as somebody who's gone through it yourself?
I think one of the most important things I could ever say is that if you are dealing with a child or young person with a mental health challenge, don't blame yourself, parents. Because I was blessed enough to have a parent that kind of helped me get through it. And I know at times that she may or may not have blamed herself, but at the same time, parents, it is never your fault. It's never your fault. However, of course, unless you put the child in a traumatic experience, that's when you need to take responsibility, you need to take ownership, and let the child know that you're taking ownership and you are willing to help them throughout the recovery. But aside from that, all I can say is just do not blame yourself endlessly, because then you'll sink into a form of depression. You'll sink into this thought that, oh, like my son,
the guilt, the guilt, like your videos say, you're gonna feel guilty. So what about to the government? What message can you tell them as somebody who's gone through it?
I really have a lot to say about the government, but what I would advise anyone within the government to do is to focus more about mental health, not just in primary school students or secondary students or university students, but mental health as a whole, especially within the family institution. Because I remember like a few weeks back, my friends like shared this photo of like mental health being debated on, and I looked at the seats. I was just so shocked. Like, my friend knew that I was going to be so shocked, because if the Tory can be full of people arguing over Brexit, I'm sorry, I'm not being political here.
Okay.
If the Tory would be filled with people yelling and barking on about Brexit, but then only a small handful of people will be coming in to discuss about mental health. I don't think that's something that's fair.
So you're asking them to focus more on it. Well, thank you very much, Nicole, for co-hosting today, because obviously it would have been easier for you to speak today because you're somebody who has gone through it. And I wanted parents and young ones who are going to follow us today to literally see for yourself, you know, from the mouth of the babe, you hear it for yourself what she has gone through. We will be bringing Nicole back at some point, and she will tell people the real journey that she has to go through. Hers started from the age of 8. She's today 17, and her way is that, you know, she met God through Christ. Things started changing. So all of that she will tell you at some point.
Yeah.
But it's very important to let kids voice out what they want to say. And we are from nations which we don't allow children to speak. Now, that's something that I'm actually advocating and I'm really pushing to change. We need to be humble enough and start listening to our children. Stop feeling ashamed. It does not mean that, you know, they're smarter than you, and your children should be smarter than you because they're gonna learn from you. And, you know, and that's a beautiful thing. It's not a bad thing. So let's stop looking at it as a negative thing, and let's really start to help the next generation, because we need to stop children suiciding. We need to stop all the things that we see in knife crime. We need to stop all of those things because it starts in our home. So that's why in this month, I really wanted to give you guys all the information I could possibly give you throughout the whole month. And we ended it with the mental well-being of people in the family. No shouting, communicate with one another. Try to understand each other's needs. If you're a parent, you're tired, you don't want to, just tell them, I don't want to talk right now, no. And she knows, I do that all the time. No, not now. No matter what it is they're bringing to me, if I feel in my mind that I am not ready, I've done so much work in a day and I can't take any more information in my mind, I'll tell them, not now, come in the morning.
And don't take it personally, sorry. Don't take it personally. Sometimes your parents just need to have that breather. And same thing with, like, if a child needs to have a breather, like, don't go barking on in their faces, but at the same time, if you feel some form of rejection and it's because that the individual's tired, just don't beat yourself up about
it's not a rejection, it's not anything bad, it's just that you have to understand mental health, how it work. It's part of communication. Listening is also part of communication. So if a person says they can't do it, leave it as that, because you're giving them time to get themselves better, and that's how it is. So if we start focusing at home, then whoever is at home, by the time they go outside, they'll be a better individual, and then so on, they can replicate what they've learned at home outside. If you teach them good things, only good things that they will do outside. If you teach bad things, only bad habits that they're going to do outside. So this was us today on family lessons. But next month, Ekoyinda is the month of June. Balobi ezali mois ya indépendant. Mse boye bete na lobalingala. Dona mois juin, toye la bino, banzembo from Santana Mongolais, ba dédicace. Donc tozo lobela bino makambo ebele na lingala. Boye ba ite na lobalingala na 100% zaza congolais. En tout cas, merci na ndenge bolandi biso lelo. Na osukso na lingala parce que moi na sina côté déjà na kata likolo a juin. Na zo préparer jeune na niveau mo mke wondi mate. So merci na ndenge bino se bolandinga. Awa na moi lelo a mettre sukisi anglais to bandi sikoyo lingala juin kaka moi kaka mort dans 4 heures lingala donc bon miste faut boye belé pour na ebiki boze belé bo luka kaka moi wana moko na pesi bino ya lingala donc boya na ba information bela opesa bino na ba donc biloko bela opesa bino ba inspiration non la episode ma bela na opesa bino pe ba o ba pasala ki nga lelo na ko mesika na komi donc ba o pe ba inspirant nga na kata communauté na boaki la ba pe ba dédicace donc bozanga te merci beaucoup et to ko jouer kaka mixtape ezobima lobby boke na iTunes bolanda voilà to silisi et to lobby bye bye
guys.
Fake friends surround me like air. Fake friends surround me like air. surround me like air. Fake friends surround me like air.
Dying of false ambition, falling short of understanding you. The mind is such a thing to waste, whether you hear me or not. I cry louder every day to be heard.
Harsh professor with dark complexion, I start the session. My architecture is cold as snow in the harshest weather. My bars are clever, my heart is dead and it's dark as ever. My last endeavor was ripping rappers apart for leisure.
I feel like I'm about to blow. I'm recognized everywhere I go. Fake friends treat me like I've changed, but the truth is I'm exactly the same.
Never too late, never too late, never too late, never too late.
Come on, I take the power like you did. Come on, I never hold back 'cause I'm too brave. Come on, I read my books, I write my flow. The young king in the industry don't wanna know.
Chosen crew pose the evil that men do. Nostalgic persona, I'm mind free from the psychological holder. I'm far from the same pain mediocre. Cranking on a different level, keep my street composure.
Some did say that true love comes with great pain, but I say it's a lie, because his love is agape unconditionally. That's how I will love you. Endlessly.
Burning desire to get a little higher. Sidestep hell without touching the fire. I ain't saying anybody is a liar, but from African religion they created the Messiah. Now that's a whole nother rap tune. Any bits I live I got a booth in the back too. Spontaneous.
Fake friends surround me like air. Fake friends surround